So, Sabelo, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Really
it's
honored.
great. It's great to have you on the show, Sabelo. And before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Thank you so much. Yeah, sheesh. I'm a quintessential South African. I've grown up in South Africa all my life, in various parts of the country. From the age of naught to about 8, I was born in Nelspruit, what is now called the city of Mbombela. I was born there many moons ago. It's not necessary for me to bore
Yeah,
people with the number. But yeah, I was born there, grew up there, started school there. And then I was about 8, moved to KZN, in a small town called Mandeni. It's about 2 hours, give or take, up the north coast, from Durban. And then when I was about 12, 13, I moved up to Joburg, spent several years here, and then was back home to Nelspruit, and post-matriculating, came back to Joburg, spent a few years starting my tertiary education, and then moved back home when there were some financial challenges. And so it became necessary for me to recalibrate, if you will.
right.
So I was back home and then I started working. And my first job, I was a salesman. I sold cell phones
Ah,
at
good.
Edgar. Yeah, and that was an interesting experience. I remember when I got my first deposit of my wages, 2 weeks' wages. I think it was somewhere around about 800 Rand and some change. This was in the year 2012. I went when I went home that day. I remember telling my mom, like, look, ma, I've got money now. I can contribute, to our home and, trying to improve my own life and so on. And the journey just began from that point, to a point where we are now.
And
Um,
Sabelo, can you tell us what was your dream career when you grew up?
For a very long time, I wanted to be an accountant. I wanted to be a CA. And it was because of two main things. Number one, I was always good with numbers. And so then during the schooling career, as you start to get a better understanding of what life looks like outside of school, it seemed to be an area that would be of interest to me. So then I started working, to get to that point. Eventually, life took me in a completely different direction, and I have no regrets about it. I did not pursue, tertiary studies towards that field, but it was a big passion for a long time. And over time, as I grew more mature and older, as my worldview itself started to develop and I developed my own identity and things that I believe in and things that I would like to achieve. The original impetus behind why I, at the time, wanted to become a CA significantly changed, and thus then it became something that I no longer wanted, and progressively, slowly over time, moved into the direction of the kind of things that I want to do, having identified my purpose in life, and having come to terms with how it is that I would need to conduct myself and the things I would need to do to realize that purpose and to live for that purpose every day. And so that's changed. And as we continue, I'll reveal a little more about that too.
Thank you. And tell us, Sabelo, who inspired you in your early days?
My mom. My mom has for a very long time, was for a very long time, the rock upon which I've I've built my sense of how she has, what she has been able to achieve in her own life, and then also to help us, her children, to realize in our own lives, has always been a model of resilience, number one, of passion and of purpose. And she's always instilled in me a desire to identify my purpose, to find something or a group of things that I'm passionate about, and to work earnestly to realize them. So she's always been that model for me. She continues to be to this day, even though now, I see life differently, and I see even her place in my life significantly differently. But she's still a rock.
And Sabelo, looking back over your career, would you say there
Mm.
was a turning point or maybe a number of turning points?
Yes, no, definitely. And some of them came from outside of work. So remember I mentioned that my first job, I was a cell phone salesman, and that lasted for about 3 months or so, give or take. Um, and then I got a new job. I became a correctional officer, and I was a correctional officer for about three years. Yeah, it was from June 18, 2012 until end of June 2015. I was a correctional officer for 3 years. And that taught me a great deal of skills, especially around stakeholder management, if you if I don't know if you've ever been in a correctional facility. If you haven't, I would seriously caution that you try your hardest to stay far away from that place. It is a dangerous place. It is a lonely place. um, but if you are working there and you want to develop your skills, one of the skills that you must develop very quickly is the ability to resolve conflict and to manage competing interests and stakeholders. You will need to be able to develop that skill very quickly, because it's a safety risk in the event you don't. A safety for you, safety for other stakeholders in the environment, and safety for even the clients of the state, if you will. And so it began to to develop my set of skills, number one. But in that process, as I began taking up academic study, because I wanted to improve myself and improve my prospects, future employment prospects in life, I then, became a lot more curious and interested in using what I was learning both in school and in work, for the betterment of society broadly. Because one thing that the correctional environment forces you to come to grips with is society in its rawest sense, in its most fundamental kind of senses. Similarly to schools, for example, schools become really a microcosm of society, and how children conduct themselves, carry themselves in schools has an impact, or is a magnifying glass on the temperature and the environment of the society in which they operate. So that's the same thing that a prison does, that a correctional facility does. And so for me, then, as I started to identify some of the really serious, significant issues in society because of that space, inside of myself, I became a lot more interested in that. Thus, I became a lot more active even in civil society outside of work. I became more active in the political life of the country. And progressively, that moved me to a point where I even then left the department, and I moved to the High Court, where I worked as a judge's secretary for a good 4 years. But the biggest turning point happened during that process, as I moved from correctional services to the High Court in Johannesburg here. Um, because when I was now in that transition, one of the things that now became a lot more in my face was the impact of political leadership and government and the leadership in government on society. So, i.e., if you have the correct leadership and if that leadership has the correct support, and if they have the correct resources, they can drive serious, meaningful, impactful change in society. And so when then I was now involved in these spaces in Johannesburg, in the political life of the country, the transformation in myself began to take root. And thus then in the year, it was 2018. I remember it like daylight. I remember it like yesterday, rather. And I remember exactly where I was. And I had a few conversations with some people, and then the light bulb really ticked, and I was offered particular opportunities, and I then took them up, and my life then has moved in a much more targeted and focused direction towards the realization of my purpose. And so even then, my own leadership abilities have really then come to the fore and at times have been seriously tested over that period, at least since that period to date. And now I'm in a position where the kinds of things that I'm doing, the kinds of work that I am passionate about, that I am spending day and night working hard to realize, really was triggered in and around that period. So yeah, there has been a turning point. The turning point is good, and there are challenges, but with each passing day, I am seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I know that it's going to be a long road ahead. So I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabelo, for unpacking your leadership journey.
Mm.
And if you can tell us what is driving you today, what is motivating you, what is energizing you today?
Mm, mm. No, thank you. I mean, I'm gonna try and be as succinct as possible because I could talk about this all day and all night. But what really drives me now, today when I wake up, when I go to sleep, is realizing my dream, and for my place in the world, and for my purpose. So, as I said to you, when the turning point began in my life, I started to be a lot more passionate about the role of leadership, especially political leadership in the life of the country. And so, from that point to date, it's the kind of stuff that I've been working on effectively every day of my life. It may have found expression in different roles that I've occupied, in different projects that I've been part of, which which have, as I say, have stretched me. So now I wake up mindful of, I have a purpose. I'm clear on what it is. I have particular projects that I am engaged in realization of that purpose. And that purpose is above me. It's bigger than me. I am merely a vessel, a vehicle for the realization of God's purpose in my life. I'm not going to make this, I don't want to put this in religious terms per se, but I mean, I am someone of faith. I believe in a particular faith. I'm a practicing member of that faith. It's not necessary for me to dig too deep in that, except to say that the projects that I'm working on are in full alignment with that purpose that I've identified, the purpose that I'm working towards. And so even the projects that I'm currently working on are designed for that. You know some of it. And should the opportunity come up, I'll share a little bit more about it. But it fundamentally is about that. It's to say, here is a purpose, there is a plan. Every day you need to work hard in realizing some of those dreams, and they find expression in different ways. And so that's really what drives me every day. Some of this project, especially the biggest one that I'm engaged in, is, you could say, in its infancy stage, i.e., we're busy right now. I'm busy right now with the lawyers involved in the process of, incorporation of this particular project. And it's exciting, man. It's exciting, and I think it's sorely needed. There's a serious gap in the market, not just in economic terms, but in terms of need for society broadly. And I'm just prepared. Every day I wake up thinking to myself, there's a place for what we're doing. There's a need for the project that we're working on. And every day we need to be loyal and dedicated to ensuring that we get this thing out and we work hard in ensuring that it is successful.
Thank you.
And so that drives me every day.
Thank you, Sabelo. And we're looking forward to hearing more and to learn more about your new project. Now, looking into the future, and I know it's a
Mm.
big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Sheesh, it means a great deal. And for me, it's leadership in a twofold way. Number one, there are many internal questions that potential leaders, current or future leaders, need to be grappling with. And those are about what is driving you? What makes you wake up and lights a fire under your belly to drive hard and to push whatever outcomes you want to realize? So there's that one part. The other part then is how that finds expression in the rest of society. There's a leader that I have a personal relationship with who says oftentimes in how they approach their work, um, that they are most interested. Yes, there are crises and solutions and problems rather that come up in their daily work, but how they think about the solutions is what can we do that achieves the biggest positive impact to society, at the same time while minimizing the potential harms. And I think for me, that is the kind of thinking that we need a lot of our leaders to have, be it in civil society, be it in the corporate world, be it in government. That's the kind of approach to not only your work, but also how you conduct yourself, that we need for our people to be thinking. Our people, this is now leaders broadly. So one part of it speaks about purpose, and the other part speaks about impact. And for me, there's a direct correlation between the two. And to the extent that leaders are able to retain an honest and authentic understanding of the purpose, then they can be able to carry that out properly insofar as the impact on society. And so for me, to the extent that we can, over time, engender a leadership culture that thinks of its role in society in those terms, is the more that our society will slowly, over time, transform into one wherein we have high economic growth, where we have high leadership ethics, high leadership morals, even from not just at the level of CEOs, chairpersons, and so on, but it will trickle down slowly over time to your general worker in the office building. That they carry themselves in that way, in a way that is authentic, in a way that is healthy, in a way that is productive, in a way that is impactful. So for me, these are the kinds of things that I imagine, I dream about, that I hope we can slowly get to. And part of then the project that we're working on is exactly focused at that, to say we need better leaders. Even the leaders that we have now, some of them are good, some of them are objectively terrible at their work. But whomsoever it is, in whatever position they're in, we need to demand better out of them. We need to demand more out of them, and we need to be clear on what this more actually is. And so to the extent that we can contribute, that I can contribute into that kind of work, then that's the kind of work that I am dedicated to, that I am defiantly committed to realizing.
Now, Sabelo, part of building the future is
Mm.
building future leaders. In your
Yes.
opinion, what is it we have to do to develop future leaders, to encourage future leaders, and to
Mm.
elevate future leaders?
Thank you so much for that. It is a kind of question that that vexes me at times. It at times keeps me up at night. But I think there are some things that we can do today, we can do tomorrow, and so on. And one of them is simply identifying the leadership potential in everyone around you, whomsoever they might be, and playing your part to help them realize their best selves. One of the most important things for me that is required of any leader is self-mastery. So they first need to master themselves. They need to develop their emotional intelligence. They need to develop their own skills and competencies in whatever line of work that they're in. And to the extent that you are a person at a more advanced level in your journey, you have an obligation to society to plow back, as it were. And so, to the extent that it is necessary, you must identify those around you who are in need of development and hold them by the hand, frankly. Hold them by the hand, as the young people say, plug them with opportunities for personal development. Connect them with people in their industry, who are at more senior levels, for an exchange between, the more senior, the older, the more experienced to the less experienced. There's no way that we will be able to develop a conveyor belt of proper leadership unless we are intentional about it. And so we need to empower people with knowledge, with skills, and we need to be giving them opportunities for them to be tested in these areas. Not just give them the opportunity, give them the tools and the resources required for them to succeed. Give them the best opportunity to succeed in whatever roles that they're in, and then leave them to succeed or fail on their own terms. It's not good for us to say that we will carve out a space. You can think of it in terms like of employment equity, for instance, and say, no, in a group of 10, we need two young, two women, two, whatever special targeted group or whatever that you think of. That in and of itself is not good enough. We need to go past that level of simply bean counting. Yes, you've counted the beans. Now the beans are here. What are you doing to ensure that these beans are in the ground, that there are given all the water they need to be able to grow and to develop? And so, as leaders in whatever spaces that we're in, we ought to be intentional about taking that on for ourselves and helping them to develop and grow. We need to think of the work that we're doing in terms that will outlive ourselves. The work that I'm doing, one of the big things that occupies my mind is that not only am I certain that we will succeed, but I will be even more comfortable with the work that we're doing once I am certain that this will definitely outlive me, that I have built an organization, a project, a collective that will be able to carry out my vision once I'm no longer here, whether it be because I've gone on to pursue other opportunities, other passions, or because I've outlived my natural life. it must supersede me. It must be bigger than me. It must outlive me. And that's the same way that I would think that if we are successful leaders, our organizations, our projects must outlive us.
Thank you. Now, Sabelo, these are challenging times as the
Mm,
world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. What is your
mm,
advice for future leaders? How should they go about the challenges that they are due to encounter in their career? And how
mm.
should they go about overcoming these leadership challenges?
Thank you. I think first of all, there's a level of humility that is required of any leader, young, old, new, or whatever you are. And the humility lies in this. I don't have all the solutions to all the problems that beset my organization and the environment in which my organization exists. I have some solutions. There are many other people, though, who have even better solutions. So once a leader is able to identify that, identify particularly their own deficiencies, their own areas that they are not strong, um, then with the self-mastery that I spoke about earlier, with that purpose-driven mindset that I spoke about earlier, they will be able to play a positive role in the management of whatever challenges that exist. So you need to first be humble. Accept that you may objectively be a fantastic person, individual. You may have all of the, academic and professional competencies in your area, but you don't have all the answers. There are other people out there in your organization, in your environment, some of whom have already gone through other challenges or challenges that you can learn from. Seek them out, seek out their counsel, seek out their support, and then be humble enough to incorporate their wisdom in your work. In a few of my previous roles, I've been a strategic advisor to senior political leaders. I've been a chief of staff in the political offices of senior political leaders. I've been a communicator working with political leaders. And so I've seen the best and the worst of all of these things. There's nothing new in the world. The
Mm.
crises might manifest differently because of the differences in whatever's going on in the world. But if you accept that there's nothing new, you must also accept that there are some things that are predictable. There are cycles that are predictable. Now, you might never have experienced them yet, but others have. And you can definitely gain from that. And so, one of the things that I first had to do, and I had to keep reminding myself about, was the fact that there have been politicians before my principal got into this position. There have been advisors before I got into this position. There have been support members who have done this kind of work before. I can seek out their knowledge. I might not find specific individuals, but there's some literature that exists around the space. You can look at literature from other jurisdictions. The types of challenges that are found in such spaces are similar. It's how they manifest that is different. That is different, and it is in your humility and it is in your personal mastery that you would be able to identify this and then be able to not only yourself find solutions, but also help others around you co-create those solutions. So for me, that's the kind of thinking that I would think is required for leaders in the making and leaders currently going through transformations. Life is about transitions, and transitions really are predictable. They are consistent. The cycle of life is consistent over time.
Absolutely. Now, Sabelo, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are maybe one or two key skills that you want to factor in and teach?
Woo! That is a tough one. Um, but one of the ones that I would be very interested in and think that is very important is the ability to listen. It's not enough. Oftentimes people wait, you'll be in a conversation and someone will be quiet. They'll be thinking their own thoughts. They might be on their phone. And all they're doing in that waiting is listening out for key things that are important to them. And once they have gotten those things, they check out. And then return with, here's my thesis of what we're talking about. But oftentimes I find that that does an injustice to the conversation. That does an injustice to the relationship between yourself and your fellow interlocutor, because you don't really get to a proper understanding of not only what are they telling you, but what lies behind that. What are the internal motivations on their side, the internal biases on your side? Instead, you're waiting simply for your own and to express your own. So the ability to listen, especially with an antithetical mindset, is something that not only am I intentionally working on developing and growing with myself, but I've seen that as I've been doing this, and I've really been doing this over, frankly, the last several months, maybe about a quarter and so. I've always been a communicator, but that communication was typically unidirectional. It was from myself or my principal, my organization, outwardly focused. Now I'm working on that constant feedback, and the listening is important in that kind of exchange, because it's when I not only have understood you, but where you believe that I have understood you, that we can have progress. And so for me, that would be one skill and ability that I think all leaders need to work seriously hard at enhancing. I myself am working hard at it. And then, as I've said, a constant thread at all material times, I think, for any good leader is that self-mastery, because that self-mastery then manifests in various facets of your life, be it at work, be it at home, be it with friends, and so on. It helps you to get even to the development of those abilities, i.e., being able to listen well, and because once you listen well, you can then be able to persuade people.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabelo. And I'm looking forward to hearing more when you guest lecture. Now, as a mentor, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader, be it formally and or informally, and that person took your advice to heart?
Sheesh, thank you. It's definitely something that I'm intentional about. And there are two leaders that come to mind. But because I had not had an opportunity to talk with them about this discussion. I don't have their permission to share their names, but they exist. They're in the world, and they're doing fantastic things. One was an intern in a unit that I managed, and we worked together for easily 6 months and some change. And it was at a time when I was a communicator. And we had discovered her, in the ecosystem, if you will. And we brought her on board, and she basically was I joined at my hip in the work that we were doing. She has gone on to become a spokesperson in her organization, having been an intern literally 3 years ago. And now she has, been able to apply many of the abilities, the skills that I helped teach her and helped to unearth within her. And she's doing amazingly. I am so proud of her. Another is and both of these have become personal friends over time. It started in a professional context, but over time the relationship has transformed, and now we are personal friends. The second one I also had met in a professional setting. They had capacity and a background in the economics world, in business, in consulting, and were trying to transition into political support, and just had some challenges navigating the space. And because at the time I was now more advanced in my work, and knowing what they are capable of, I brought them on board. It took several months or to get them to first buy into the project. I remember in the first instance they've told me flat out, I am not going to do that. I'm much more comfortable in this space. Political support is not for me. And we let it go. We let our personal relationship develop. And, I kept, just watering the seed that I had planted, a year before. And a year became 18 months. It became 2 years. And in the second year, rather in the third year, they then reached out to me to say, okay, I now not only am I personally passionate about this stuff now, at least the project that you are inviting me to, but I am now excited to be part of it myself. And then they became one of my right hand men when I was chief of staff. And we did amazing work together for a solid 18 months. We did amazing work together. There were some changes in the government at the time, and I went on to do other things. But now they are at a point where they have occupied the kind of role, they now occupy the kind of role that I had always imagined is actually the work that they are best suited for as an advisor. So, I started out as an advisor myself, in 2019, or rather, I got involved in this kind of work as an advisor in 2019, but I had already reached that level in my personal development. They were not at that level yet. And even at the time when I brought them on board, they were not at the level, at advisory level that could occupy that senior position. But now they are. And I am clear, we are both clear about the impact of not only my support to them over the years, but also how that support of mine and how they've been able to implement it has indeed resulted in them realizing their best dreams for themselves. And so seeing these two people who were at different levels in their professional development, identifying the potential within them and being able to plow into them and to water the seeds of personal development in them, and now seeing it realized literally over the last 12 months or so, coming to fruition, them coming into their own, has been one of the highlights of my life.
Thank you.
I'm immensely proud that I've been able to do that for them.
Thank you for sharing, Sabelo. And tell us, looking back over your own career, are there any role models of leadership whom you've encountered and maybe worked with who you feel future leaders should learn from?
They definitely are. I think if I would be honest, completely honest, this is I've been honest all along. I think there are there are leadership lessons that I have learned from almost every leader that I've worked with throughout my professional career. Every manager that I've had, every principal that I've had, I have learned something out of each of them, be it a positive lesson, be it a negative lesson, um, or at least lessons of things to avoid, of ways of conducting yourself that are not good. And so I would be doing somewhat of a disservice to the story of all of these leaders if I would specifically limit myself to each one. There are some leaders that I have encountered over my career who who have taught me to be a lot more agile in my decision making, and in my prosecution of the work that I'm doing, who have taught me to make how to make decisions properly, and how to then execute against those decisions. And I've learned a great deal from those. There are leaders who've taught me to be simply more disciplined in my work, to say that you will not always be motivated, but if there is a plan, you need to work hard every day to be 1% closer to realizing those objectives, of the plan, of the goal, of the mission. There are leaders who've taught me to regulate my emotions better, in particularly in highly charged, and highly sensitive engagements, and so I've learned a lot of that. And then there are leaders, who taught me, or rather from whom I have learned how incompetence in leadership is bad for business. And that if I imagine myself a good leader, I need to always ensure that not only am I good at my work, but I'm also good at helping you do your work better. And so I've learned a great deal of these things. Maybe on a different day, at a different point, I might, start to identify individuals. But at this point right now, I would be hesitant to name and or shame
Yeah,
anyone that I've
yeah,
learned from.
that's thank you.
I've taken the good with the bad.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabelo. Now, where can our listeners follow you and how can they connect with you?
Well, I'm available online, across multiple social media platforms. I am because of what I am now the project I'm now working on. I am now slowly over time move changing the content that I put out to be more focused on the work that I'm doing. And so over, and I was working on this earlier in the morning. My content plan for over the coming weeks or so, weeks, months, as we launch the
All right.
project that I'm working on. And so you will definitely be seeing much more of me in broadcast media. You'll be seeing much more of me in digital media, in print media, because it is a channel. All
Right.
of those forms of media are a channel for the communication about the work that we're doing, and what we would like to see achieved in society. So right now, for quite some time, I'd held back, while I've been planning and seeking counsel, seeking wisdom from other leaders that I know. But now the plan is clear. And over the coming weeks, incorporation will be done, and we will hit the ground running. And I will be publishing significant thought leadership in a relatively regular fashion. We are intending to start with at least once a week, an opinion piece on something in line with our work. And so I'm at this point right now, there's one that I'm currently working on, which should be out in a matter of days, i.e., by the end of this week, I intend for it to be out on one of the digital platforms. And I will then be going on a little bit of a media tour, advocating for it.
Great.
So the content now is not out, but it will be out soon in the coming weeks,
Thank
and it'll
you.
all be out under my name and under the name of the organization that we are going to be launching soon.
Thank you, Sabelo, and we are very much looking forward to reading, hearing, and listening about it. And thank you for making time to share your insights and your wisdom into this important topic, the future of leadership, and for inspiring us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate your confidence in the kinds of work that that I am passionate about. And I think congratulations to you too, for engaging in this type of work. It is important. It doesn't always get the amount of eyes and attention required. But it is important work. You're doing important work, and I'm happy and excited and honored to contribute in my small way to the furthering of this kind of work. So thank you.